Okay. So, first of all, where do you work?
So I work for hang on, headset is working.
Hmm.
Um, but I work for the VA. But if I tell you the specific agency or like sub agency, it's very specific and not a lot of people work there. So I would just prefer to say the VA
Sure.
because it's a headquarters agency and people would probably know where it was.
Yeah, no worries, no worries. So, how long have you been at the VA?
So I have been a federal employee for almost 7 years.
Okay.
I worked for the VA originally at a facility, and then I was gone to the Department of Health and Human Services for a little over a year, and then came back to the VA.
Okay. And why did you decide to do that?
Career-wise, it just worked out. I could get a promotion with HHS, and then I came back to the VA because HHS is different than the VA. The VA has a lot of rules and handbooks, and I really appreciated that and really liked the structure of the VA, where I
Hmm.
felt HHS didn't have the same support system. It wasn't as organized. They didn't have a lot of the same rules and structure in place.
Hmm.
And it's like when you see one federal agency, you've seen one federal agency, they're all different in the way that they operate. And sometimes that's kind of, I think, challenging.
Okay. I know that a lot of people who work for the VA have a background in like military in their family. Do you have that?
No, nope. I like although I like the mission of the agency and I like what we do, I am not connected to the military, was not connected to the military.
Okay, so then what originally drew you to the VA?
It really was the fact that it was a service, like being in a service organization, public sector, obviously helping veterans, just feeling like it was important.
Okay. So what do you do?
So I work in human resources,
Hmm.
and I've done both recruiting, I've done employee and labor relations. So I've kind of touched a little bit of the major HR functions.
Okay. Um, are you in a supervisory position now?
Yes.
Okay. And how long have you been a supervisor?
So just over a year. So
Just a-
when I came back to the VA, I took a supervisory role.
Okay. So since this is kind of like a new position for you, were you affected by the probationary employee stuff?
So me as a supervisor, it didn't affect supervisory probationary periods, but it
Hmm.
affected me as a supervisor because I had a team of new people. And
Hmm.
so out of my 8 employees, um, 3 of them were probationary. So 3 of them were but like 3 of them were terminated on a random Friday. They were gone for a couple of months. They came back, and then subsequently, two ended up taking DRP. Like two of my
Hmm.
probationary employees
Hmm.
took the DRP. So,
Hmm. Interesting. So, okay, how big was your staff before the January inauguration?
yeah, so I had a team of 8. So I had
Hmm.
8 HR specialists that reported to me. And like I said, in my organization where I was, we were a newly formed team when I came back. So the team was pretty much brand new. Some people had transferred. I had 5 that were transfers from other parts of the organization. And then, like I said, 3 that were actually probationary that were brought on for this role. So that makes up my 8 staff.
Hmm. Okay, so then how many people do you have right now?
Well, I technically have 5, but I have 2 who have been detailed. So my team of 8 as of today is down to 3. I should get my 2 that were detailed to another part of our agency back at the end of September.
Wow. Okay. So you had some people leave because of the DRP, and you had some people leave because they were probationary employees. But then you said that they were brought back on?
Yeah, so because of the legal challenges of the probationary period,
Yeah.
um, they were terminated in February. They were the three that were terminated in February. They were brought back in April. So they were paid, but they were back paid. So it
Okay.
was like they were back paid, they got all of their benefits back. So it really was a waste. Like I didn't get like a month and a half of work out of three people who were terminated and then subsequently brought back. Like
Yeah.
it just was frustrating, you
Yeah.
know.
That is really frustrating. So that's kind of crazy. You have a very small team now. How is your workload?
Well, so part of what we do, they stopped doing, right? So
Hmm.
because of the political climate, so my team processes awards. So they process like special contribution awards and they process like performance awards. So that's part of our role. So that in essence stopped. One, because there was the continuing resolution and the budget. So we weren't processing those things because we didn't know if the budget was going to go through. And then two, we just continued not processing those things, even though there was a continuing resolution that came through. We leadership didn't want it to be viewed that they were paying awards when they were laying people off. Like it, it's bad press, and nobody wanted to make that decision to pay out awards when, like I said, when they were laying people off or people were being asked to, take early retirement, like the voluntary early retirement.
Yeah. So it sounds like your workload has kind of decreased.
Yeah, we still do other things. We do, like I said, HR actions. So we're processing other things, but our workload did dramatically scale back. But it'll ramp up again because we also handle performance, like I said, and so the performance cycle goes from October to September. So
Hmm.
our performance season will get busy, and so that will ramp up again.
Yeah. So like performance reviews. Okay.
Yeah.
Um, have you seen any changes that are going to be implemented to the performance reviews?
Which for VA, if you understand VA, we have multiple handbooks and our policy is very well laid out. Like it's very thought out. I refer to policy every day in the work that I do to, coach managers. And while we've seen there's an 18-page memo that came out from OPM that they're talking we have to have guidance on, but we haven't gotten it. So we're waiting. Like every day we're kind of it kind of holds us up because I can't give guidance to managers because our leadership hasn't deciphered what will happen with that memo. So that memo, there's like a whole bunch of changes that drastically affect us. So right now, we do one mid-cycle progress review, and that memo says there has to be three of those. So like our system has to change. They also said there's like forced distribution, which we have never had that. So I think the memo says it's like 30% of the employees, not more than 30% of the employees can get a 4 or 5. So ours is a five tier system, right? So 5 tiers. So anybody can get, any of those 1 through 5 ratings, one being unacceptable, 5 being outstanding, various things in the middle. Um, we're being told that there's forced distribution. So again, there's a bell curve where not everybody can be outstanding, not everyone can be excellent. The majority of the staff have to be fully successful, or unacceptable. So that's different. And I don't know
Hmm.
how they're going to calculate that, how, like, because when we review these, they don't always come in at like, yes, we review them at the end of September, the beginning of October, but I don't know how they're going to do that. Our system's not built to do that. Like each employee is supposed to be based off of their own performance plan.
Hmm.
That's how I know it's expected of me. My performance plan lays out what it's expected of me. So if I'm performing to that performance plan, how can you tell me, I'm I'm not performing to it, right? Like, how is my standard then? Like, if I'm doing outstanding, how can you then tell me, nope, you're just going to get a three, you know? And so it's supposed to be based on the employee themselves, not a group of employees, right? So I can't say, 30% of my team is outstanding and the other, you know, 70% is not. How do I determine that if I'm basing their performance on their own performance plan?
Yeah, and that affects the employee's future employment, right? Because future employers are going to look at that and they're going to see, oh, you only got threes the entire time you were there.
Well, that and RIF. So if there was a RIF in the future, RIF is based on which the fourth, I mean, there's four things that RIF is based on, like your tenure, your military status, your rating is one of them. So if that's the case, then what will they do about that in the future? I know a lot of people were panicking because they did announce that we might have a riff, and so we were going back through and verifying records and making sure everyone's performance ratings were correct and systems we were putting them in when they were missing. We did this whole record review, and how is that fair to someone who performs when again, how will they determine who is a four and who is a five out of that 30%?
Yeah, that's tough. So, personally, what are your thoughts on this?
I mean, I have like to be honest with you, like we have metrics. So my team, I like this past year, my team was kind of an underdog. Like we inherited the reason why they brought us back is we inherited like a huge backlog of work. And my team was proactive. They went ahead. We have metrics, right? So like from the time we took over at that point in the year, we had like 95% done as opposed to the prior year, and the servicer that was doing the work had like 15% done. So my team knocked it out of the park. And how can I say that, only one or two of them is going to get a five when the rest of them should only get a three when there's numbers to back it up. We have metrics that back up the performance that they did. So that's, like I said, that's frustrating. So that's how it would affect my team. Like, how can I reward those people who went above and beyond, who worked really hard to do the job? And I'm just going to tell them, I'm sorry, I can't recognize you for the work that you did.
Yeah, and that I would think really deeply affects your employees' sense of self-worth and wanting to be in that job and wanting to continue to work hard if they're not even being recognized for the work that they've done.
And I know my team members, for the majority of them, take it personally. So I have people on my team, like I said, who transferred in. I have three who are 20 plus year employees. They've been federal, they're all military. Like my team, they all have military service, right? So I'm pretty much the only one on the team that doesn't. But they all do. They're all veterans, like they're veterans, and they work really hard, and I can see it in them. Like they like when they can help the people that we service. They like the work that they do. I literally had this great team. Like I had a great team of eight, and like I said, with three of them gone, it was a hit. It was really a hit, and it was a challenge to stay positive and motivated every day. And I'm the supervisor, and I have to encourage them to come to work, and I'm frustrated, and I know they're frustrated. And we have a Teams chat where we talk every day. They talk to each other. Like they all it's like and they'll tell you, they're like, this is the best position I've had. Like they love it. They love what they do. And then to have all of this chaos and drama and turmoil, it really, the morale of my team took a hit. And that's why, like I said, I have a couple who detailed because they were like, if I'm going to be chopped, like I want to get experience in another department so they can at least say, hey, I've done this before. Maybe that experience will keep me, because they were all really worried about their jobs. So.
Yeah, that's tough. What are some other experiences and challenges that you're facing in your job?
Um, I I think. one of the things and why I wanted to talk to you is I think there are opportunities for positive change. One of the things is like standardization of HR practices, like across the country, across the agency. Um, and that's one thing that like every time there's a change in administration, there's always like a change in the practices. Like when I first started and I was in a VA facility, um, we did things one way. Like we were all in the facility and we had facility specific recruiters. We had facility specific ER special employee relations specialists. We had those people in the facility. Then like within my first couple years, they did what they called modernization. And so instead of facility specific, they went to VISN specific. So a VISN is a group, a network of hospitals. There's facilities. There's, quite a few of them across the country. So instead of being responsible for one VA hospital, you were now responsible for a network of VA hospitals. So you had a group of recruiters that worked together. You had a group of employee and labor relations specialists that worked together. So they kind of, in a way, it kind of siloed us, but in another way, it kind of standardized across the facilities. But it there really is an opportunity for the VA to better standardize that, right? Like to make sure that not only within the VISNs but across the VA as a whole, that it's all standardized. So just like a 10,000 foot view, VA is like an umbrella. So there's the VA, there's VHA, which is the Veterans Health Administration, which is the hospitals. There's VBA, which is Veterans Benefits, which is like, those people who served their benefits. And then there's NCA, which is National Cemetery Association. So those three separate entities fall under the main umbrella of the VA. And then there's also some VA central offices that kind of service, like the Inspector General's office. They service like some of the other like specialized organizations that are at the VACO level, so the VA central office level. So there's a lot of duplication between, like HR specialists at a VHA and the Veterans Benefits, the VBA and the NCA, but they're all separate. So I can see, an impact of if they centralized all of that HR, maybe it would make us all kind of do the same things. Like if we all learn the same things, if we all um, had the same training and we standardized a lot, that might be a way that they could save money or, ensure better quality service for the people that we serve, like our customers.
Okay, so you're saying that you think it would be better instead of having individual recruiters at every level to have like a, a very broad recruiting level?
So it may help. And there are, like I said, there's kind of like layers and there's different. So under that global VA umbrella, there are different like factors or different sets of recruiters, doing specific things. But if we all had the same training and if we all, they could reduce, I think, some of that redundancy, some of those challenges that they have. Like I don't know about your experience with the federal government, but I know when I first started, it was like sink or swim. It was you kind of like um if I didn't ask the questions, if I didn't take the initiative to like learn the policy, the procedures, no one's going to hold your hand like that's the interesting thing about federal government. And I've worked in the private sector and I've done HR for a lot of years, and that's exactly what the difference is in I think the federal government is like you have to be self-motivated, you have to take the opportunity, and you do like there are a lot of people who gatekeep, like who are like, I don't want to teach you because I don't want you to know something I know. I don't practice like that. I never have. If I ask my team to do something, I'm not going to ask them to do something I can't do or have an understanding of it. And they know that if they come to me with questions, I'm going to answer their questions. I encourage them to work together. So, like, that's the thing. And I don't know if, Like, and I don't know if it goes back to like competitive hiring doesn't encourage that, right? Like competitive hiring, the way that we do it with the merit system doesn't necessarily encourage that. Like it doesn't, it encourages like qualifications and bringing people on, but I don't know if the like if you can really find the attitude or the mindset through like the current hiring process.
Yeah, I like that point that you brought up because yeah, it's really hard when you first start out. And there's a lot that you need to know, a lot of nuances that you have to learn from certain people. And I think that's a huge problem. It sounds like across the government that certain people hold certain types of information and that information isn't shared. So when those people leave, that information is gone. That person who knows the policies and regulations and stuff without having to take the time to Google anything, they just know it. They're gone. Like that's a huge problem.
And that it like that's it that you will get people who who don't want to share. You will get those people who are maybe old school, who are afraid that you'll get ahead of them if you know something they don't know. And that is like that's the thing. Like, and I mean, it's not like you can't learn. Like I said, I didn't know anything. I just asked the right questions and I just kept reading. Like if you read and you ask the questions, you can kind of get there. But with the federal government, like it is very technical. Like everything we do is based on a law or policy. And so you're right, there can be nuances that people don't understand and you lose that. Honestly, we lost a ton of institutional knowledge. One of my employees had been in this department. She retired due to she took Vera. She retired. She had been there for a long time. And I find myself like she still calls me every day because I feel like she didn't really want to retire. She did not want to retire. And so she'll call me and check in. And there have been times like I'm like, oh shoot, she was the only one that knew how to do that. Like I gotta ask her. Like and she's willing to, she's such a sweet woman. She, like I said, been an employee for a long, long, long time. And if I called her, she would tell me. But it's that like we lost that. We lost that because of the turmoil. Like she just didn't know what to do. She had the time in. She didn't want to be forced out. She's a little bit older, like, and I don't mean that in a bad way. She was 70, so she was old enough to retire. But she didn't want to, and so we lost that. We lost that institutional knowledge, and that's really terrible. Like we'll never get that back.
Yeah. So going forwards, as a supervisor, are you trying to think of ways that you can preserve institutional knowledge or share that better?
Well, and like I said, with my team, I encourage them to, like I said, to learn together. Like we will jump on a Teams call and we'll go through things together. They reach out and ask questions. We have a SharePoint where we've documented our internal, like our team specific policies and procedures. So we try to do that. I mean, but I'm sure there's things that like because my team is brand new, right? Like we have only been together for probably like just over a year and a half. So like we haven't run into everything that we probably would run into. And even though I have access to old files, like you just don't know what you don't know, right?
Yeah, absolutely. I could think of it in my experience. We had one employee that we always went to, always. If you don't know something, go to him. He knows how to do it. And I remember we did like grants and agreements and stuff like that. So working with universities and um, our system accidentally sent out $50,000 to a university. It was just like, here you go, have the money. And it was just a glitch in the system. And I had to figure out how to retract that money. I didn't know how to do it, but he knew how to do it. And he knew how to go through and find the exact code that said, oh, this is, what the error that happened. This is exactly the steps that we have to do to retract that money. And it's just, nobody would know how to do it except for him. And I just can't imagine all the institutional knowledge that's just gone across the government, that's they're trying to force the failure of the government, but also in a way, like you're saying, trying to force some kind of change, like making sure that information is being shared in the future and having a SharePoint and stuff like that. So, yeah.
Yeah, it honestly, like, could things have been done differently and would they have been as successful? Like, I mean, they totally could have come in and said, you know what, we need to either reduce our staff or work and look at ways to make changes, you know, but without the chaos and the drama and all of that, the turmoil, like that was so unhealthy and unnecessary, and that's the problem. And then after that, saying like they were asking us for like suggestions and how can we stop fraud, waste, and abuse, but who's gonna say anything after all of that, those months of turmoil and chaos. And literally, I would have people, my team in the chat, like, they don't even know if they're going to have a job tomorrow. We don't even know what's going on. Like, leadership isn't being transparent. And, um, how do you deal with that, right?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah. So is your staff still feeling fearful?
I think we've come to grips with there could be a reorganization somehow within our department. And like I said, I think it makes sense that they streamline some of these like HR processes to be nationwide. So I can see that. They were very, very worried that there would be a riff and that they would be out of a job because of that. But I think um, although like leadership has said no, they're not going to do a riff. So I think at this point, there enough people have left due to Derp and Vera that my team at this point feels mostly confident that we'll have a job. Will it be under like our same agency or sub-agency? Maybe not, but I think they've come to terms with that like, yes, we could be going through a reorganization, but they still feel confident that they'll have a job. And again, these are people with 20 or more years of service who are saying like, I don't know if I have enough seniority to withstand a riff. Like, that
Mm-hmm.
isn't that crazy? Like,
Yeah.
you know.
Wow. Has a return to office affected your team at all?
I will say this, my team, out of the 8 people I had, we're all over the country. So we were never going to be in the same location. Like, we service the part of the organization we service, um, has people all over the country. So our customers are all over the country. Our customers are not in one location. So my team is not in one location. If I went to an office, I'm not going to sit with my team members. I'm not going to be there to have a chat conversation with them directly. um I will say I've always been one to be on camera, and I expect that of them when we have a team meeting, and they're cool with that. They've gotten used to it, like they will. So we have never had an issue with me not being able to reach someone or get a hold of them. Like, if I call one of my team members, they're going to answer the phone. And or relatively quickly, or they'll call me back. Like, I don't have a problem with my team holding them accountable to be at work when they're supposed to be at work, and I have no concern that they're wasting time or not doing what they're supposed to be doing, because I've seen that. Like, I can put the numbers out there, I've seen the results. Like, we have a product that we have to deliver and they've delivered it, so I have no concern. But at this point, like, my sub agency doesn't own, like, they own buildings, but our buildings are few and far between. So they don't have space. They have to negotiate with other parts of the agency to put us into location. So none of my team has been returned to an office because they still don't have space for us. They still don't have space for us. And several of my employees have medical challenges, so they do have reasonable accommodations. That process is kind of a farce. And I don't mean that, like, I know my team has medical issues, and I'm not saying that. I'm saying the fact that now they're all being reviewed by an upper level of management. Like, I'm their supervisor. If I have that, so reasonable accommodation is the process, right? It's an interactive process where I, as a supervisor, meet with my employee to try to determine what the best accommodation or tool is so that they can do the essential functions of their job. And if I'm having that conversation with them and I'm saying, like, okay, we can adjust your schedule. You can be at home because you can control lights if they have migraines. You can control smells if you have, or whatever, or you can be close proximity to a bathroom if you have, you know, bowel issues. If I'm the supervisor and I can agree to that because they can get their work done, I don't understand why that's not good enough. And so they did put out a memo that like those decisions will be reviewed by an upper level manager. And so I'm not sure that that upper level manager, because I don't know what they've been told, is going to continue the approval of the reasonable accommodations that my employees have in place now, for their workplace flexibilities.
Yeah. So all of your staff right now, they're at home because there's no space for them. And yourself included, you don't have to go to an office right now because there's no space. But they're actively trying to find offices and space for you guys to report to.
But
Okay.
again, I don't know if they've stopped because it has something to do with our reassignment or reorganization. Like I don't know if that's the case as to why they've kind of stopped, because if they reorganize us, we may fall under a different umbrella, and they might say, oh, we have space, or or we can find you space. So I don't know if that's why our like direct agency has said, we're just kind of putting a pause on it.
Yeah, that's interesting. So some people might say that, reasonable accommodation, like why do you really need that? If you have a disability, then maybe you shouldn't be having this kind of job. Maybe if you have a hearing impairment, maybe if you have a visual impairment, maybe this isn't the type of job for you. What do you think about that?
Well, as I said, it's neither here nor there, but my employees are veterans. Okay. So don't they get the flexibility of, if they have a service connected disability, of us as the government giving them the opportunity to have work that's productive and that they're part of that, like that. And I guess that it doesn't matter if they're veterans or not. Anybody who has a disability has the right to do a job, right? Like, and honestly, like, telework has been around way before COVID. Both of my parents were federal employees, and I know back when they were working, telework was a thing, and they've been retired for a lot of years now. So, I mean, we're talking like into the 80s, like telework was a thing. So, why is it all of a sudden the telework is no longer now a thing? And again, I mean, I guess you could say, is it a control issue? Is it, and I'm not saying that, okay, if we have facilities that people shouldn't be housed in facilities, but why can't we be accommodating and flexible? Like, why is it like now there's nothing when they've gone from, like, the pendulum has swung like the complete opposite way, where, okay, yes, COVID, they sent us home at COVID, but now they're trying to like move that back. But obviously, like I said, we don't have space. There's no space. So where are you going to put people if there's no space?
Yeah. Yeah, I've heard from other employees that they've been forced to go to a VA hospital and try to work in like a reception area or hallways, and that's just not feasible, especially for someone like yourself who works in HR and has to deal with sensitive information sometimes. It's like that people are covering their mouths when they're trying to talk and have sensitive conversations. It's just not feasible.
Like I said, my team's not even there. Like, my team wouldn't be, we're spread out all over the country. The people we service are spread out all over the country. I'm not going to an office with other people that I'm interacting with. So again, I'm on camera. I expect that from my team. They understand it. I will put my camera on for anyone I consult with or talk to. I don't have a problem with that. Like I think that's where I wonder, is some of that the issue? Like, you're on a phone, whatever. But again, I don't see that as an issue in my own on my own team because they know what to expect. They will turn on their camera. We will have a conversation. Like I don't care, I just don't understand.
Yeah. And I'm interested in how the DEI cuts or ban on words has affected you at all.
To be honest, not specifically. Not that I don't think those programs were good or valuable. I think like the way that I do see it is some of the challenges, like so from an employee and labor relations perspective, like there's a lot of challenge when you're dealing with a supervisor and an employee. So sometimes there are like interpersonal issues that like that DEI um encompass like mediation. And I mean mediation in the fact that like someone qualified from EEO could sit in on like a conversation that the employee and the supervisor were having and kind of mediate that. Like that's the stuff, right? That at least from my own perspective that I think suffers, right? Like that part of it suffers. Um, also obviously we want the best qualified workforce that we can have. Like I don't know that um that taking those DEI initiatives, like they give opportunity to people who may not have opportunity otherwise. And I think that's the positive of it, right? Like aren't we better as a whole with different perspectives and different understanding? Like doesn't that make us better? So I like I said, maybe not, maybe the program's cut don't directly influence me, but I can see why it's detrimental that we don't have them.
Yeah. I mean, I personally agree with everything that you're saying, but I have also heard and seen comments from people who say that, down with DEI, we don't need these kinds of things. Everybody has the same opportunity as the person next to you. And I know, and I think you know that that's not true, that it's important to have different perspectives and not everybody has the same opportunities in life. Um, and we have to allow people to gain, promotions and opportunities that they might not otherwise have. Um, and that betters the workforce.
I think it, and I'm not 100% sure, but like pathways. So there's like a hiring program called Pathways, right? And that's for like recent graduates and like um other people to give them specifically a pathway to being hired, right? And so I think that's one of the programs that they're no longer doing anymore, which again I think is a shame. Like how do you recruit the next generation of those public sector employees, people who want to work, like young people? Like I don't know, if this were me coming out of college into this right now, I don't think I'd want to work in the public sector after seeing the trauma that everyone was put through. Like, I certainly wouldn't want to start my career here. I don't think it would be beneficial. So how are we like, shouldn't the government have the best employees? Like, shouldn't we be hiring the people who, are the best and brightest? Like, they don't want to come into this drama and chaos, right? Those people, the highest qualified people don't want to come into that.
Yeah, and this makes me think of I think that it's the same memo that I read also from OPM that talked about the 5 questions that they want to implement on the new applications. They also talked about the merit system that they want to implement and the different hiring mechanisms that they want to get rid of. Um, and I just a couple days ago started applying to more government jobs, and I saw that they actually did implement those 5 questions. So in your position working in HR as a supervisor and reading this OPM memo, do you have any insight as to how this stuff is actually going to be implemented?
I know they'd been talking about, like, for a long time, they'd been talking about assessments, like how, like, again, because this is part of the competitive process, like, how do you assess a candidate's qualifications? That's a challenge, right? I come from a background of I did public sector at a state level. So I understand civil service. And so civil service in and of itself, like at the state level, at least the state that I'm in, they give tests and exams, and you have to qualify by scoring high enough on a test or an exam. There are so many positions that you can't test for, right? I can't necessarily take a test, for some of the positions that we hire for. So like you know, the doctors or some of the things like psychologists or whatever, you can't necessarily test to find the most qualified. Like, yes, they're board certified, whatever. But in civil service, the point of civil service is, um, you know, not giving your friends jobs, right? The administration, the political administration, not giving their friends jobs, that we get the most qualified candidates in the seats, because that, again, is the best thing for our government. And also not having turmoil when there's an election. So the point of civil service is to keep things status quo so that our government can continue to operate while an administration changes. And I get, yes, there are positions that are higher up that need to be based on, political whatever. But for our frontline employees, like, everything should stay so that we can continue operating our government the way that it needs to operate. And so, like, I see some of this stuff, like the DEI, or the not, like, stripping away of the unions, as chipping away at our merit systems principles, at our civil service protections, so that, like, those are, like I said, the little things kind of chipping away at that, giving us those protections. And so if those things go away, then you're going back to that chaos of every administration has a turnover of employees every so many years. How do we, like you said, keep that institutional knowledge and continue to operate our government? Like, that's the problem, right? Like, we need those things in place. People, you know, lawmakers way back when there were challenges, put those laws in place for a reason. So why would we go backwards on that?
Yeah. And what do you mean by the merit system?
So, like the merit systems principles, merit systems protection, there's 11 or 14 kind of rules in place. Like, you can't hire your friends, you can't supervise family members, supervisors can't retaliate against employees, like those protections for civil service employees, right? So we have those protections in place. And federal positions are kind of, it's like, I always equate it to property rights. Like, yes, when you get your tenure, you have property rights over your job, so that you can't just be fired at will. There's a process in place. Like, we either have to remove you, and we have to go through those steps. And there's the MSPB, or the Merit Systems Protection Board, to oversee that process. Like, so if an employee does get removed, they have rights, they have recourse if they feel that that firing or that separation isn't within the law, right? So that's what it is. So you're protected as an employee with merit systems principles and merit systems rights. You're protected so that you can't just be fired for no reason, and that you can go back and say, like, hey, I don't believe this was right, or I was targeted, or whatever. And there's a third party that will review that action and make the decision.
So I have a couple questions about this. So do you think it should be easier to fire federal employees?
So I guess that's kind of like here's the thing, like, we have probationary periods, all right? And I know we kind of talked a little bit about probationary term. So most probationary periods are a period of 1 year. And so the employee really should be looked at in that 1 year period. I know I did read this like a long time ago, and I don't know what the current stat is, but like we fire people in their probationary period like 1/4 of the time. It's like this ridiculously low number. So it's we're not utilizing that that's what a probationary period is, right? Like you decide whether or not the job is right for you. The employer decides whether or not you're right for the job. And so that probationary period, there are less protections for the employee as far as civil service go in that probationary period. That's the time when we really need to evaluate whether or not that person's going to work out. And so we have not utilized probationary periods. If we utilize probationary periods, then I think things would work out better, right? Like you would be able to determine whether the employee is a good fit. Okay, you terminate them during their probationary period, no harm, no foul. But they get to that period after their probationary period, they become quote unquote an employee and they get civil service protection under the law. And I don't know. I mean, I don't know that I think it should be easier to fire an employee, but um, there are steps. There are steps. Like supervisors have to do their job. Like I, as a supervisor, one, have to hold my employee accountable for their performance. And then two, if they have conduct issues, yeah, there's progressive discipline. There are ways to do it the right way if you're having problems with an employee. Like you just have to follow the steps and make sure you're doing what you need to do as a supervisor if you need to terminate an employee.
Okay. So there's a series of steps that supervisors can take, or they're supposed to take, if they think that an employee needs to be removed. So does it take a very long time, or
So let
can
me
you
give you
talk
an
more
over.
about it?
So in the VA, at least, there are two tracks that they can follow. So performance is the employee can't do it. They just can't perform the tasks of the job. So we take the road of performance. You have to be able to show that you've held the employee accountable to their performance plan and that they just can't meet the metrics. They get an opportunity. So we put them on a performance improvement plan. They get the opportunity to demonstrate whether or not they can do it. You give them the tools. You want them to be successful as a supervisor. You give them the tools to do their job. If they can't, after that performance improvement period is over, you can propose their removal or you can propose a demotion. I mean, it gets very technical, but in the broad overview, if you were to propose their removal at the end of their performance improvement plan, then the employee gets notice, they get all of the documentation. You say, this is why we're proposing your removal. They get a chance to make a response, and then it's decided, right? So there's a deciding official, someone who says, okay, I'm going to support this action, decide it. And then the employee is, if it's decided that they can't do the performance, they're removed, right? So it does take a while. Yes, it does take a while. That process takes a while. Conduct is a little bit different. So conduct, it's progressive discipline. We usually start out with like a letter of counseling, a letter of warning, a reprimand, an admonishment, and then we move to what's called adverse action. So a suspension of more than 14 days, they could get a demotion, they could get a removal. So while we recommend going through progressive discipline, so it shouldn't be the employee's first, warning that gets them terminated. But if it is egregious, if there's like an egregious act that someone does, yes, you can propose a removal. But there's also, like I said, documentation. There's also like a notice period. The employee gets a period um, to respond to whatever evidence is presented against them. And then again, it's decided. So there's a deciding official, someone higher up who says, I've read through this case. I'm going to be objective about it. And I'm either going to, adhere to the discipline or not. And so yes, these things can take a while. Is it good? Is it bad? I don't know. It's the process, it's the procedures that are in place now. And if a supervisor is doing their job and they're holding their employees accountable, it's not a process that they can't overcome. Like it's not a process that that we couldn't terminate an employee for either of those things, performance or conduct. It's just, it has to be done the right way. And you can't, a lot of times I see things where the supervisor hasn't communicated with the employee, like especially when they're performance related. The employee hasn't, or the supervisor hasn't really communicated well with the employee, like because the employee has to know what's expected of them. And a lot of times the supervisor's like, well, I did this or that, but did you tell the employee what was expected of them? Did you have that communication? And um, within that 18-page memo that came out from OPM, it did talk about holding supervisors accountable. The problem with that is when you have working supervisors who are expected to have tasks and do things, performance actions take a lot of time from a supervisory perspective. You're now meeting with that one employee every week. You're now providing them more specific guidance. You're now taking a lot of your own time to coach and work with that employee. So performance actions can take a lot of time, and they can be difficult from a supervisory perspective. And a lot of times, like the challenge is some of the supervisors don't want to do that. So they'll either figure out some way to transfer the employee or, they'll pass them along, right? So that's the problem is if we as supervisors can hold our employees accountable, then we don't just let them get away with it, quote unquote, get away with it, and that we can remove employees. You just have to do it the right way.
So, do different hiring pathways affect this process, like veterans preference, Schedule A, disability, things like that? Does that affect this process at all?
Usually not until the end. So they do this thing called the Douglas factors analysis. So the Douglas factors are a set of questions that ask like how long has this person been an employee? Do they know better? Are there mitigating circumstances that, like especially within conduct, are there mitigating circumstances that, we didn't take into account, when we proposed this action? So some of that there are like, looking at the bigger picture, there are other factors that come into play, um but not necessarily in the process. Like conduct performance would be the same for any employee, but maybe the analysis of their removal is a little bit different depending on the situation.
Okay. All right. I appreciate that. I'm mostly asking these questions because we had one particular person on my last team who is difficult and nobody liked him, but our supervisor just kept him on for Lord knows what reason.
Well, and that's the thing. It brings down the morale. Like if you're on a team and you see one employee who, other people see like they're not doing their job, they're getting away with it, they're not being held accountable. Like, yes, there are things that you might not know. Like, what if that person has a reasonable accommodation? Or what if that, what if there are other circumstances, right, with that employee that you might not know about? But when you're on a team, yeah, you kind of can see that. Like, why is the supervisor not holding that employee to the same standard they're holding me to? Like that, I get that. Like, I see it.
Yeah, yeah. So, is there anything else that you would like to let the public know about your challenges that you're experiencing at work, or, really anything that you would like to get off your chest?
I mean, I think there are definitely ways that we can improve. I mean, I think there are definitely things that could be improved. Um, I mean, I love what I do and I want to, retire from this as a career. I just think it's been the last 8 months have been like a horrible roller coaster. I hope that we're now, out of that. I hope that we're like on the right path now, that this is done and that we don't have to deal with, any more uncertainty. Yeah. Oh, and the other thing, I guess I don't know if I said this from the beginning, but these are my own opinions. I don't represent my agency. I'm speaking on behalf of myself. These are my own thoughts and feelings. So
Very good. Last question for you. So the hiring freeze that'll last until October. Do you know if that's going to be lifted? And if you guys, at least at the VA, will be able to rehire some people?
Personally, I think it will not be lifted. I don't see them I do know in my own chain of command, my supervisor is gonna stay, but her supervisor is um is leaving. She's already said she's retiring and they're not backfilling her position. So I don't know what they'll end up like the they'll end up moving the duties to other people. And because there's a hiring freeze, like the thing that kind of sucks for us and it like it kind of sucks for us is so there aren't what's called temporary promotions or like they're not doing temporary promotions anymore. So if they take someone from a lower level and just assign them those duties, like you're just getting assigned the duties, you're not getting the bump in pay. And it's not necessarily about the bump in pay, but when they do a formal action, so you have to have 52 weeks in a grade level in order to progress to the next one. And sometimes if there are openings, if you can show that you've done a job or been detailed. Like, so for instance, if my supervisor weren't there and I were officially detailed, like that means there's an action, I'm bumped up in pay, I'm temporarily promoted, and I'm in that role for a period of time. Um, I could get credit for that, right? And I also get the pay to do the job, but I'd also get credit for that. So if she left, then maybe I would be the best choice candidate for that role. And because they're not doing temporary promotions, I still have to do the work if I'm detailed to that role, but I'm not getting the pay for it and I'm not getting the credit for it either. So, in a sense, it kind of hurts us because if I'm trying to develop my career and think about long-term plans, like where I want to be and if I want to move up, it doesn't do me any good to do the work and then not have it officially recognized. So that's the kind of the crappy part.
Yeah. I also I feel like they're not going to lift the hiring freeze. I think they're just going to keep going.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think, I mean, the medical facilities are still hiring. Like they're exempt. So there are VA exempted positions. So the medical facilities are still hiring, those critical need doctors and nurses and providers. But I think administratively, they're not going to. I mean, I think if more of us would have left under DRP or Vera, I think they would have just accepted that and they would have just, farmed out the work to the rest of us that remained. But yeah, I don't see them hiring any administrative positions.
Yeah, absolutely. Are there any last comments or thoughts that you would like to say?
Thanks. I mean, I think I appreciate that you're doing this and that you're asking for opinions and kind of having this conversation and that there is an opportunity for an outlet. Like I said, I really hope um that somehow good comes out of this, like in some way, shape, or form. Like I would still want to be an impact for positive change, and that that like I said, that my employees who took the DERP and the Vera didn't do it in vain. Like that there's some positive somewhere that comes out of it.
Yeah, I hope so too. I mean, things can't always be messy like this. There has to be some good. There has to be some positive.
Yeah.
Yeah. I thank you very much for your time and, getting into detail with all this. I hope you have a great rest of your evening and a good week. And yeah, I'll talk to you later.
All right. Thank you.
Bye.
Bye.